No sound. You just tried the simple. Oh, there it went. Check, 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 check. All right. All right, I think we're good now. Always something, everybody, right? A little loud there. All right. All right. It's about time. Never any fun without the technical abilities. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We'll run through some of the game information. And I do want to, I've been threatening to do some things over the course of the offseason. We're going to do some of these things. We've started working on a new setup that'll allow us to maybe bring some of you in to do questions on video or send them in and better utilize you and make it a little more interactive and bring guests in and things like that. It'll keep it interesting all off season and plenty of stuff to touch on, right? Or as we, dig into the off season, whether it's the free agency, the draft, you name it. Coaching changes. I'll probably do something on that here very shortly since all the changes are in, and we'll kind of start digging into that. But I thought, you're going to hear a lot of chatter as you watch the pregame shows and everything this weekend about quarterbacks because we all pay a lot of attention to quarterbacks, and there's a lot of them in the news. So we'll get to that. Let's go through the game first. Again, thanks for coming, Football Diehards. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you like what you're seeing. Hit the dislike button if you hate me. It's okay. I'm good for it, man. I've been around a long time, used to this. The goal here it will be to kind of set the table. Dusty's already, talking. A lot of people doing the prop bets. The legal sports gambling is a big thing. We've been looking at that. I think the Rams are still 4.5 point, depending on where you go. I think you can get up to 4.5 point favorites. I like the Bengals in this one. Dusty Hirsch, my main man over here, likes the Rams -4. I like the over 48.5. Just not to get too far in front of myself. But I'm picking the Bengals 31-24. I can see a scenario similar to what we saw with the Chiefs and Bengals, right? Where the Bengals seem to be reasonably decent at making adjustments on defense. We've seen it a couple games, right? So that's kind of the direction I'm going. They've got the playmakers. The Rams have playmakers too. So I think the Rams jump out to a lead. I think Cooper Kupp's going to be a big part of this. It's very hard to contain him. Matthew Stafford's been, he's the Super Bowl MVP favorite for a reason. Hasn't thrown, I think he's got, one turnover in the postseason? That's pretty good. Bengals got a decent pass rush. Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson obviously can can put some heat on him. Stafford not incredibly mobile, but we've seen him make some runs. But, he's got Cooper Kupp. He's got Odell Beckham. He's got Van Jefferson. He's got 3 running backs. And let me get through the injury report before we get too far in front of things because it matters. Only one player listed with a designation. That doesn't mean everyone is healthy, though. For the Bengals, it's C.J. Uzomah's listed as questionable. That seems to be basically a, precautionary. Just they're checking the box, right? Because he missed some practice time. Everyone else is off the injury report. That includes Stanley Morgan, who's more of a special teamer than an offensive contributor. But all their key players in this one are good to go for the Bengals, and expect Uzomah to play and to be fine, barring a setback. Not so fine for the Rams is Tyler Higbee and Joseph Noteboom, both placed on injured reserve. On Friday, they were both out. Higbee had sprained his knee. We knew that was coming. So Kendall Blanton is your guy at tight end, right? And he had already been priced pretty high on the DraftKings, right? I was, coming in this game even before we knew for sure Higbee was out. I think Blanton was, is Blanton more expensive than Uzomah? It might be. Yeah, he is. So 6,900 to 6,600 on DraftKings. So, there's that. Everyone else is off the injury report, right? And I see the question, DJ. I'll get to these. Just want to set the table here. And so, they have 3 running backs, though, now. And that's going to be an issue, I think, if you were looking to play. I kind of like the Sony Michel. I like the Sony Michel prop bets. A lot of them don't like the Cam Akers props as much. But Henderson kind of puts a wrench in that a little bit. I really don't know what to expect. If I stand here now, what makes logical sense is not a lot of Darrell Henderson, right? Just coming off IR, sprained the MCL, taking this time off. In the meantime, Cam Akers came back much more quickly than we expected from the torn Achilles tendon. Hasn't been super productive, right, though? Hasn't run for more than 55 yards. He's gotten great volume. If you remember in those games leading up to the playoffs, so, without Akers and Henderson, Michel was dominant, had some really strong performances. So game script may have something to do with this. Maybe in the first half we see a little more running. think in the second half, as the Bengals get things going, that might change a little bit. But, look, Matthew Stafford is the favorite, the odds-on favorite to be the MVP, clearly for a reason. DJ Sniper wants to know, can he seize the moment? And that's really the question. We've seen games in the past, during the regular season even, where he's made the really bad turnover, the pick six, the occasional bad play, and that's going to be the key. The Bengals, the thing that strikes me about them is they've done a really good job of making defensive adjustments throughout the playoffs and down the stretch of the season. They come out and they don't have it dialed in. They get it dialed in and figured out. I do think Stafford can seize the moment. I also think Joe Burrow can seize the moment. But the Rams running offense, it's a little bit tougher to run against the Bengals than it will be to pass against them. Look, I can't see, Mike Hilton is a really good, cornerback. I don't think he's good enough to cover Cooper Kupp. And even if he is, they'll scheme ways to get Cooper Kupp open. Watching Cooper Kupp play has been really amazing this year. In case you missed the NFL honors on Thursday night, he was named the Offensive Player of the Year with damn good reason. I mean, it's just a record-setting season, amazingly productive. And so, hit 125 yards, I think, 7 times. And I think that's there's a lot of prop bets involving that. And I think those are fair. I think Cooper Kupp is going to be a dominant part of this offense, have a couple touchdowns in this game. I'm betting the prop that has him scoring once in the first and once in the second half. Doesn't happen a lot. The odds are good. So I like that. For the Bengals, man, Joe Burrow has been amazing, right? But he has a problem. They can't pass protect well. We saw it against Tennessee, had 9 sacks. They overcame them, but I think we can all, it's not like a big secret. It's not ideal. That's not an ideal circumstance. If he gets sacked 9 times, odds are the outcome's not going to be great for the Cincinnati Bengals. And so they're going to have to scheme it up and find ways to slow down that amazing pass rush with Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd and Von Miller. And that's going to be tough based on what we've seen. And so that'll be the key. Joe Burrow's play is going to be the keying, his ability to get the ball out of his hand. Like to see Joe Mixon, be a big part of this game. I'm not sure he will be, right? He's had some, I thought it was he 3rd in the NFL in rushing. He had a great season. He's a big part of the offense. I think as far as the Bengals go into a game, I think they'd love for Joe Mixon to carry them. If he can, great. If he can't, they'll fall back to the passing attack. Obviously, they have some weapons there. Jamar Chase is really good, but also T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, Uzama will be in the mix. There's some great prop bets on this. I'm spreading my Bengals props out a little bit. Samaje Perine, I'm willing to take some shots on him. We've seen him score in the past and make some nice plays. And you wonder if he won't be in on some 3rd downs or whatever if they get in a bad situation or the game script, which I'm thinking will happen if they're playing from behind in the second half. But it's really, the Rams' run defense is stout. Their pass defense is stout. There's 2 possible outcomes here, or 2, theories in how they'll handle this. The Snoop prop, will he smoke on stage at halftime, is a great prop, Dusty. I agree. Talked about that last night with some friends on the Fantasy Data Pod, and it was interesting. What was I was not thinking the over on Burrow. So like you even look in the game against the Chiefs, right? I mean, the numbers weren't huge. You only connected on 23 passes, 250 yards. We got the 2 TDs, and I think I think something similar to that is likely to happen. I forget the props right off the top of my head. Let me look at the over unders for that. I should have had that up anyway. Let me bring that up real quick, which is obviously not as quick as I'd like, right? Over under. Somebody's probably already given it to me. 288 yards is the over under on that. I'm probably going slightly under on that. I don't think that keeps them, keeps them from winning the game, right? So that's kind of where I am. And so I do think, spreading the ball around a little bit, being efficient, maybe some plays on defense, that might be a factor in this one as well for the Bengals. It won't be all on the offense. They'll maybe have to make some defensive plays. Both kickers are great, right? So there's that. So I think some of, just looking at some of the, the general over-unders, some of the things we'll be interested in as fantasy players, right? Uh, Matthew Stafford, 36 pass attempts. He hits that a fair amount. I'm probably going to take the over on that because, again, I think in the second half they'll be playing 2.5 rush attempts. Don't know that he'll get there. The over-under on passing yards for Stafford, 286. He may well get there, right? Cam Akers, I think the over-under on his rushing was – I didn't like any of the Cam Akers props, 63.5 yards. I don't really like it. Or rushing and receiving, 80.5. Don't like that. Rushing, 63.5. Don't like that. When I say I don't like that, is I don't like the unders. I never like taking the under. I always like taking over. Sometimes the odds bear that out. But in general, I can kind of just see this being Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. There's going to be there's going to be an outlier making a play on offense. And by an outlier, I mean somebody not named Cooper Kupp, whether it's, Odell Beckham, Kendall Blanton, Van Jefferson, I think all capable of doing that. Some of my favorite props in this game, I'll just run through some of those because I do have some favorites, some props that I like more than other props. First touchdown scorer, Cooper Kupp, plus 450, like that. To score a touchdown in both halves, I'm going to go with that, plus 600 on Cooper Kupp. Total touchdown passes, I'm obviously going to go on Matthew Stafford, the over 2.5 on that. Somebody else is going to catch a touchdown. The total touchdown passes in the first quarter, half touchdown for Stafford. I'm going to go with that. Touchdown score parlay, I'm going with Cooper Kupp and T. Higgins. It's plus 325. I like that. One that I thought was interesting was Joe Mixon on receptions over and under. It's been about 50-50. This is one where Vegas has really kind of nailed it, right? You look at, he's had fewer than 4 catches 10 times this year. He's hit right at 4 a number of times. So, that's a pretty tight line. If I was taking unders, I'd probably go under on that. There's a couple that I really like, a couple, and just, first interception of the game. I think you could go either way there. But one that I think is interesting, how many players will have passing attempts, over 2.5. I'm going to take the over on that. It's plus 115. I can see Odell Beckham throwing a pass, right? Somebody throwing a pass, fake punt, a quarterback getting knocked down for a play or knocked out for a play, any of those things. That seems like not unreasonable. One that I really like, though, is total penalty yards over 77.5. It's minus 115, but thinking there's going to be a pass interference and some holding calls, yeah, I think there will be. I think that all seems pretty reasonable. So the other crazy props, Snoop lighting up a blunt. So will he smoke on stage? I saw will he light a blunt on stage? Where was I looking at? Just smoking, I just wonder if there's not something in the contractual riders for this game that keep them pretty well in line. There usually is, and also they are, they're a hip-hop outlaw kind of musicians, so who knows what they'll do. I think some of those are interesting. All the over-unders on the national anthem and things like that are always a good time. I generally take the over on that. I do not know about Mickey. So I'm using a couple sites. Underdog DJ is one with some, but Bovada has tons of stuff, and that's where I'm doing most of it. So I got to admit, though, Mickey Guyton, the over/under. So I think what color does Mickey Guyton wear? All these things, and I was thinking, well, doesn't Mickey Guyton have a friend? And friend saying, "Hey, I'm betting you're wearing blue." And that said, though, I thought Mickey Guyton was a guy until just recently. So what do I know about it? And so not a big hip hop fan, so I don't know. Some of the I know there's one prop. Does Tupac show up as a hologram? Maybe, right? That doesn't seem crazy. Eminem wear a Detroit Lions jersey. That seems like a fair bet, right? I think he probably will. So, all those things are very interesting and very exciting. My pick for the game, I mentioned, I got 31-24, Bengals winning this game. Rams jump out a little bit early, and then, playing a little scrambling a little bit in the second half and struggling as the Bengals make the offensive adjustments. The wild cards here are obvious. The things that, could totally foul my prediction are really obvious. The Rams defense, first and foremost. I think Aaron Donald, the odds have gone from plus 1,000 to plus 800, for the MVP for him. I think that's entirely possible if the Rams win, that he would likely be a pretty strong candidate for MVP. Obviously, Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. Again, Matthew Stafford, the favorite to be MVP for the obvious reasons. So I think all those are fair games. It's a ton of fun. I've not been a big gambler over the course of my time. I focus on the fantasy aspect, but now that we're kind of combining the two, it's become a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. It's something we'll do more going forward. I don't know if you've been following along on the website. FootballDiehards.com is where we live. We had this year the remarkable Drew Phelps of SiriusXM Fantasy fame doing the prop bet articles for us, and we'll probably build on that a little bit next year. He did a fantastic job, but there are obvious ties in between fantasy production and the props, and also like on Underdog. I mean, if you go there and you want to bet the props, you can bet on fantasy point production. If you're playing the DraftKings, I mean, I'm kind of in on Kupp, so I'm using him as a captain. I'll have a number of lineups. I haven't set them all yet, but just my base lineup, there'll be Kupp and Stafford. Then after that, you have to find some outliers. One of mine is Samaje Perine. I have T. Higgins as well. So I think there's many ways you can approach this, and I think it'll work out well. Does anyone feel strongly about any of the props or any of the bets? Any bets you're making out there that you feel like are really important? Timothy's already to go into the dynasty. We're gonna go into dynasty. Go ahead and ask your question, Timothy. I'll be happy to answer. But that'll be something we really go into heavily over the offseason. I'll drag my guy Mike Dempsey in here on occasion at some point when we get the guest thing set up, because nothing we like better than talking about dynasty. And we will do that. So if you have a question, go ahead and throw it in. Dynasty PPR is the starting point. We'll see if we get a little more information there. But throw in the comments, anybody, if you have any bets that you really like, or any really strong feelings about the outcomes, or strong feelings about players, strong feelings about Snoop Dogg getting high while he's doing the halftime show. We'll be still waiting for my Metallica halftime show. Or I would take a Tool halftime show. Yes, I just saw Tool last week. It was fantastic. If you know, you know. But yeah, so look, the NFL. Did anyone watch the NFL Honors? I thought they did a great job on that show. Had a good time. So here's Timothy King's got it up. ADTN at 203, B102, and 104. I'm not quite understanding the question, Timothy. I see what maybe it's coming to me as I sit here and I ponder it. Hello, Renzo. A or B? Okay. So you're looking to trade ETN and a 203, or do I want the 102 and the 104? I'll take the 102 and the 104. That would be my approach there, Timothy. And again, we'll get into this more. I know a lot of people are already getting ready, and we all start setting our, going through and cleaning out our rosters and trying to talk ourselves into letting go of people that we have been unable to let go of, because we're sure they're going to turn into something, even though they've never shown any signs of turning into something. Can the Bengals line compete on any side versus the Rams line? Yeah, I think they can on the defense. I mean, I mentioned Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson, both really strong pass rushers. And the Bengals run defense has been pretty solid, right? So I think they do a pretty good job. They've been fifth in rushing defense during the regular season, but they've been a little bit worse. And some of that maybe the Titans. I think they've given up 127 yards per game in the playoffs. But DJ Reader and BJ Hill, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, all playing really well. So yeah. Oh, you have the 101 as well. Wow, Timothy, you're set. I like Travis Etienne, and I think I'd rather have that early draft capital. If I had 3 first-round picks, I'd feel really good about it. I'd feel better about having that in Etienne an extra second. Although, if you really wanted to do this, I mean, the second, Etienne in a second is not horrible. I'd rather have that 102 and 104 if you're giving me the choice. So even if I have the 101, can really set up a dominant. Would have been better if he had it last year, though. He said, stating the obvious. Captain Obvious Harris. All right, so we've done some Super Bowl stuff, and it's one game. It's very exciting. I hope it's huge. I hope they can live up to the, some of the things we've seen up to this point, right? The playoffs have been phenomenal. Some of the best football in my lifetime. If you're looking at me on the screen, you realize I'm quite old, and so I've seen a lot of football, and it's just been phenomenal. But one thing I wanted to start setting the table. You're going to hear a lot about it. If you haven't, I know, I'm steeped in football, and I know most of you probably are. But if you're not, you're going to hear a lot of talk about quarterbacks on the 39 hours of pregame, some of which I see over the top of my screen right now. But you're going to hear a lot about some players, right? And so let's just run through and set the table on some of the quarterback situations. I'm going to make my early predictions for the outcomes of some of these situations. Some of the logical things, and like we all know, like anything is possible anymore. Once Brett Favre played for a team, not the Packers, we could see things shifting, strange things happen. And so, can't dismiss them, but I think the odds are we can kind of work the odds here and make some initial statements, right? So the top story is going to be Aaron Rodgers, right? And I don't think we're going to have to wait long. He just won his 4th MVP award Thursday night, in case you didn't see it, second year in a row, the MVP. So we all saw the drama last offseason where basically he, became disenchanted with the team and with Ryan Gutekunst in particular. Stafford over 283. I don't think that's unreasonable, Wendy. I think that's not unreasonable at all. I think he's going to end up throwing a fair amount in the second half. But we've also, we understand that the relationship's been repaired to some degree, but a lot of it's going to depend on how they convince Aaron Rodgers that they're going to move forward with Davante Adams in particular. Aaron Rodgers has said he doesn't want any part of a rebuild. I believe that. I don't think the Packers feel they're rebuilding, but they're $50 million over the salary cap. They've got some work to do. Some of that work would include, a new deal for Aaron Rodgers, say a commitment to him over the, for a longer term deal, maybe 4-year deal that's heavily loaded to work in their favor and work in the cap, and is essentially maybe a 1 or 2 year deal, but that they can spread the money out and gain some cap relief. Then they need to get a long-term deal done with Davante Adams. He wants to be the highest paid receiver in the league. That too is probably doable. 6 is not out of line. I don't want to go overboard, but we saw the Tennessee Titans sack Joe Burrow 9 times, right? So it's entirely possible. But I'm going to take kind of the middle of that. 4.5, 5. I think is pretty damn reasonable. Maybe with a lot of pressures. So there's that. So we've heard with Aaron Rodgers a lot of talk about Denver and Tennessee, the latest because he's building a house apparently somewhere in Tennessee. That to me doesn't seem super realistic given that Ryan Tannehill, I know a lot of people in Tennessee have become disillusioned with him and think he has not taken them to the promised land. He's done pretty good, right? Maybe needs all the help around him. They need to work on getting some more pieces around him. Not named Derrick Henry. But he's not going anywhere. Financially, it would be prohibitive for the Titans to move on from Ryan Tannehill this year. So Aaron Rodgers there doesn't seem likely. Denver is a possibility, right? They took the offensive coordinator, one of his favorite coaches, a guy he endorsed heavily, Nathaniel Hackett. And so that obviously, and there's talk of his fiance lives in that area, soon-to-be wife lives in that area, so in Denver. So anyhow, there's going to be a lot of drama until there's not. I think this one we're going to get resolved sooner. Here's the bold prediction. 90% Aaron Rodgers either plays for Green Bay or retires. I think that's entirely possible. You might just say, to heck with it, and move on. But I think if he does play, 90% he will play for Green Bay. This is where I was all last offseason. If you followed along with me on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, I stuck with that through all the drama. I think we're right. I don't think things have changed materially, except this. The relationship between Rodgers and Ryan Gutekunst seems to be better. Right, from what we're hearing, not just from Rodgers and the people that cover the team, but it seems like he went out of his way. They brought in Randall Cobb, who probably won't remain, but the key is going to be presenting Rodgers with a plan on how they're going to move forward without a true rebuild, right? And they're not going to be able to keep all the pieces they have now, but they do have a lot of really good pieces. So whether it's the Davante Adams piece will be the key in this. So that's the domino to watch, whether they franchise him and then work on the long-term deal. If they franchise him and Adams doesn't like it, how does Rodgers respond to that? Does that go well for him? So I suspect there'll be a lot of talking behind the scenes. Rodgers said when he accepted the MVP award on Thursday night that he's not going to drag it out. That's the second time he said that. So my expectation is we'll get a pretty quick decision, and I believe that he'll be back in Green Bay. That brings us to the Kyler Murray mystery. He has played in the Pro Bowl and then scrubbed all the Arizona Cardinals, unfollowed the Cardinals on all of social media, and scrubbed all the photos, right? There's 2 photos of him, one including in his Pro Bowl uniform. The Cardinals today did the same. They unfollowed Kyler Murray and took all his pictures off. Who is the best NFL player, in my opinion? Wow. That's a broad question. I mean, Tom Brady doesn't play anymore. I mean, demonstrably, he was a very good NFL player because there's a lot of measurements that we could argue here. But if the measurement the players look at would be winning championships, no one's been better than Tom Brady in that. Although I realize half of you out there will think he's a cheating dog. Some interesting new information on Brady too, and we'll talk about him here in a second. But Renzo, that's a pretty broad question. That would be my answer. He no longer plays. I would go with the MVP. Aaron Rodgers is a pretty good starting point. I love his receivers, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp. You could make an argument for him. You can make an argument for a guy like Aaron Donald. I mean, it would be an interesting argument. In my opinion, it was Tom Brady. We'll see who can supplant him. Kyler Murray, though. So the Cardinals today removed him from their social media and scrubbed all the photos except for 2. In the end, this may be, there's been a lot of talk. Like Murray wants a new contract. He's worried about Cliff Kingsbury's job security. The season didn't end well, right? There was a lot of bitterness and anger. And sometimes you see that disappointment, especially when we hear people talking, when you talk to a player right after a hard loss, we get the post-game interviews and people are asking players about their future. Never listen to that, right? Never listen to what they're saying in that moment of disappointment, although I think some players are handling it pretty well. But in Kyler Murray's case, we didn't really hear anything other than that they all talked about needing to get better. Clearly, there was some pretty rough meetings between the Cardinals brass, owner Mike Bidwell, and GM Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, his teams have folded, right? They need to get something better. Kyler Murray, not due for a new contract just yet, heading into his 5th year, so they will want to get something done with him at some point. This may all be, there may be a commercial in the Super Bowl tomorrow that's tied to Kyler Murray's social media, right? I mean, anything crazy. I'm going to go 100% Kyler Murray is back with the Arizona Cardinals next season, whether he's happy about it or not. Let's go with that. And Cliff Kingsbury will be back too. So it's beyond that it gets interesting, I think. Russell Wilson, the other one we're going to hear an awful lot about. We're already hearing an awful lot about him. Mostly we hear it from Russell Wilson's camp, right? Not from Russell Wilson himself, who always says, I would love to play the rest of my career in Seattle, etc. He says all the right things, and then the people who work for him say all the opposite things, right? So we hear a lot of that. I think he is willing to explore his options. There are teams that need quarterbacks, right? New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Denver could use quarterback, and maybe others, as things play out. But, yeah, and Russell Wilson has not been shy about it. Certainly wasn't last year in putting out the list of teams he'd be willing to play for. And we'll see how that plays out. I know Albert Breer from SI.com talked this week. He thinks it's entirely possible Wilson is open to being traded. I think it's possible too. I had talked to a local reporter there, Michael Sean Dugar from The Athletic in Seattle last season when all the drama was ongoing. And he predicted at that time, he said in 2022, you won't see Russ and Pete Carroll both in Seattle. Well, we know Pete Carroll's coming back. And so what the reporting is, Jody Allen, the owner, took over for her brother when he passed away, wants Russell Wilson back. Yeah, I mean, and obviously you would, unless you have a replacement for a quarterback. Why get rid of a quarterback, right? But I do think Russell Wilson would like to check greener pastures. And I think if Sean Payton hadn't retired, I wonder if he wouldn't be pushing hard to move on to New Orleans, which might be an ideal landing spot for any quarterback if Sean Payton was there. He is no longer there. So I'm going to go ahead and say there's been other teams mentioned. Philadelphia's been mentioned as, a destination he might like, and where they maybe are not as sold on Jalen Hurts as they say they are. They say they are, by the way. And teammates certainly are. what has been the most consistent team, in my opinion? Well, over the course of time, the last, let's say, 20 years, it's been the New England Patriots, mostly because Tom Brady played for them and Bill Belichick was a very good coach. But again, they won a lot of titles, were in a lot of Super Bowls. That would be the most consistently successful team for me. Russell Wilson, though, there's been some talk about Philadelphia. Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, everyone has really given their vote of confidence to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was really strong. Teammates love him, consider him a very strong leader. We'll see how sold they are on him. I believe they are sold on him, but if they show some interest in some of these other players, then it'll get interesting. Desean Watson is in limbo, remains in limbo, will probably remain in limbo until they figure out the legal situation. We could have some resolution on that soon. But I do think teams would love to land him. Not necessarily the Miami Dolphins. Seems like maybe that ship has sailed. But I've talked about this last year, and I think this is going to be the same this year. It's Carolina. And I say that because the owner there, David Tepper, is kind of an aggressive gambling type of person. No, Renzo. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to stay with the Green Bay Packers. He, as I mentioned just a moment ago, I think 90% certain he remains with Green Bay. And but Denver is definitely would be if in the 10% range, right? If he wasn't playing for Green Bay, it would be Denver. So I think it's entirely possible. I'll get to Daniel Jones with an offensive line. Let me finish my thoughts on Deshaun Watson here. Watson is he's going to play somewhere. Someone's going to go after him. Would that be Denver also? There's another possible landing spot where they need a quarterback. New Orleans, again, needs a quarterback. Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. Tampa Bay needs a quarterback. I think all those are, look, anything is wide open and crazy, right? But when you bring in Deshaun Watson, you're bringing in a lot of drama. Who's going to be willing to do that? David Tepper. The reason I keep bringing up Tepper is he talked about when he bought this team. He didn't buy this team to be the middle of the pack, right? Parity is the design of the NFL. David Tepper doesn't want to be average. He doesn't want to be, that team that's 500 or, now it's hard to be 500 because we have 17 games. But you get the point. I think he's going to make aggressive moves and he'll make a play. And that to me is the most likely landing spot. Although I wouldn't rule out Denver. I think it's between Carolina and Denver. And New Orleans is going to be a dark horse. What they do is going to make a difference. DJ on Daniel Jones with a decent offensive line and a good coach, right? So all due respect to Joe Judge, I mean, he's, I'm sure a fine coach and, kind of an old school kind of guy and just didn't have the guns or the offensive whiz-bangery to get it going, right? So I do think Brian Daboll has that. And as we read this, I'm seeing a notification on my screen how much Saquon Barkley thinks Brian Daboll is going to do a great job. Obviously, everyone talking at the Super Bowl. They need to work on the offensive line. I think they have enough skill position players that they can focus on fixing the offensive line. But the thing about Brian Daboll that I think we saw the development of Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? With Daboll. He gets a lot of credit for that. He's been an offensive coordinator for a number of teams. He's done a really great job over the course of time. I think there's a lot to like there. But if you looked at last year in particular, the game planning he did, the specific game planning, the week to week, the adjustments and changes he made to meet the opposition, I thought he did a really good job. And I think that's going to work in Daniel Jones. What do we know about Daniel Jones? He's got a big arm. He can run. Just don't ask him to run all the way to the end zone, right? Trip and fall. But I think there's a lot to like here. And I agree with what the ownership said of the Giants. They've failed Daniel Jones, right? They didn't put the pieces around him. Not that they didn't try, but the offensive line has been a big whiff. And look, Kenny Golladay came up short, and we'll see what Kadarius Toney can do. You probably heard the talk. There's people who believe he could be traded. A lot of talk to Saquon Barkley is a possible trade candidate. So we'll see what plays out there. But Daniel Jones is a guy they want to fix, and I think they'll put a lot of effort into. And Brian Daboll's the right guy, I think, to do that. And again, I'm going to going forward, we'll do some deep dives on some of these coaching changes or all the coaching changes and what these coaches bring to the table and what they mean for the fantasy prospects of players. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. So we went through Deshaun Watson, and that leaves us. What does Houston do now that they've hired Lovie Smith as head coach? He talked a lot about Davis Mills. Look, if you watched last year, Davis Mills developed nicely, right? I mean, I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, But for a guy with a really limited college experience, right? He missed a lot of time with injury. I think he had 11 starts in college. I thought he came on pretty strong, and he did a little bit. So to me, that's a possibility for them. Tyrod Taylor is a free agent. Don't know that he'll be back. Pretty sure Desean Watson won't be back, though, right? So that's the direction that's going to go. But Desean Watson to Carolina is my pick. Denver is my fallback. And New Orleans is the dark horse there. Just real quickly, the Las Vegas Raiders hired Josh McDaniels. They're saying all the right things. The GM they're bringing with them, it's a kind of a package deal, right, from the Patriots. They're going full Patriot way there in Las Vegas, and something Renzo asked about, who's been the most consistent team. I think teams would like to duplicate that kind of success they've had in New England. I don't know if that's possible. Because Tom Brady was such a big part of it, but also just the way the organization has done and built, and the approach they take. I think Josh McDaniels can bring a lot of that. So the first question is, what do they do with Derek Carr? I'm going to go ahead here and say they keep him and they work with him. Carr's been very good, right? I mean, just in general, they don't always have the pieces around him. He doesn't always come up big in the biggest moments, but sometimes he does. They need some help in that receiving core, right? They've made some clear whiffs on their draft picks and receiving, right? And I, don't mean to make light of it because the Henry Ruggs situation is horrible, but what a botched situation that was for the Raiders, and not the only one, right? So it's going to be, they have some work to do, but Josh McDaniels, I think, is a good person to do it. I think Derek Carr remains in Las Vegas, so that kind of takes Las Vegas off the table. Yes, 2 first-round picks, too. I agree with that, DJ. They're in good position to build on that line. Remy, a quick question here. Who's my number 1 overall pick in a non-PPR 12-man league this year? I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be probably in 95% of every draft, the first pick taken. I think he'd probably be my first pick. I think I'd make an argument for Derrick Henry, too. I know he's coming off the injury. But those would be the 2. I mean, in non-PPR, I think people lean a little more towards Henry. I think he catches the ball fine. I think it's a little bit of a not a great way to look at it if you're not picking him in PPR drafts because you think he doesn't catch the ball well. But whatever the case, I think those are the top 2 picks in fantasy drafts this year. And Taylor will be the first guy you see come off in the vast majority of drafts until you don't. We'll see. Maybe some things change. Maybe there'll be people, Remy, that start taking wide receivers or go a little – maybe we'll start seeing drafts go a little wide receiver heavier. I'm interested to see that. I'm going to start drafting this week. If you're listening to subscriber to SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, me and Dempsey are going to start drafting on our show on Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So check that out if you get a chance. And we'll also be on today. If you're listening today, we'll be checking out, I think it's the NFC East, doing our divisional previews there, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. No show tomorrow, but we'll be on Sundays, Saturdays, and Sundays until baseball gets straightened out. I don't know how long that'll take. Maybe forever. I don't think you can fix baseball because it's horribly broken. We're going to go back to the quarterbacks here. If you're just listening for the first time or you stumbled across this and have no idea what the hell's going on here, I'm Bob Harris. I'm with a site called footballdiehards.com. Would love for you to check that out too. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button if you like what you're seeing. Hit the dislike button if you hate my guts. It's okay. I can handle it. Jimmy Garoppolo. If you heard his postseason press conference, he knows he won't be back in San Francisco. Says he'd like to go to a team that's focused on winning. Wouldn't we all? I think that makes great sense. I'd want to do that. We'll see where he goes. Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Carolina, Denver, all these, the usual suspects are probably on the list here for them. Look, all Jimmy G has done is win a lot of games, right? And I mean, for San Francisco, by the way, Joe Montana making the rounds at Radio Row this week made an argument that the 49ers should keep Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't think Trey Lance is ready. And that's going to bring up another point that we're going to dig into is Trey Lance. Where are we drafting Trey Lance next year, right? This offseason. And I think, there will be people who are very aggressive with this. So we'll see. I'm ranking him like right outside my top 10, like 11. I think, but I think he may end up going higher than that. And I may move him up in my rankings before then. But that was my initial ranking. I think I have him at 11. So that's where we're at on that. But my guess is Jimmy Garoppolo moves on. My list goes Pittsburgh, New Orleans, Carolina, Denver. But there was a wild card. I think it was Mike Sando from ESPN, or formerly with ESPN, put out Indy as a landing spot for Jimmy Garoppolo. And you say, wait, they have Carson Wentz. Well, do they? Are they sold on Carson Wentz? Both Frank Reich and the GM there have kind of gone on the record as saying, well, we reevaluate every year. And I don't think that's necessarily a lie. I think they probably aren't sure what they have there. So they're going to look at it and maybe see what other quarterbacks come available. So I think Indy definitely a dark horse. I think Carson Wentz most likely remains an Indianapolis Colt. But that's a situation to watch. Could get interesting there. Cleveland, Baker Mayfield, he will be back, but there's been no communication, recent reporting between the Browns and Baker Mayfield. He would like a new contract. He's not going to get one. They're going to play out this contract, see how it goes, and he's going to go from there. They need to keep him healthy. I don't know if this offense is ever going to, the Kevin Stefanski offense is ever going to make for great quarterback numbers and put a lot of onus on the quarterback. And in the times it does, though, Baker Mayfield needs to deliver, right? I mean, and he hasn't always done that. So that's going to be one to watch. Tua Tagovailoa in Miami seems like he's locked in. Mike McDaniels, the new head coach there, formerly with the 49ers, has worked with Kyle Shanahan and that group of coaches, all the way, Sean McVay. I mean, that whole group from Washington went on, has done great things. He'll get his first shot, and he's professing he's locked in on Tua Tagovailoa and making him as great as he can be. I don't think there's going to be any change there. The Steelers I mentioned have the choices: Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins. Those seem like not great choices to me. This is not a strong draft class, so maybe they draft somebody later and hope they can develop. Maybe they hope one of these guys can develop. Based on what we've seen of Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins, I don't have a lot of hope. Do they go after one of these veterans that are going to be floating around out there? It's doesn't seem like the Steelers style, but this, sometimes circumstances dictate your reaction, and maybe they feel they're forced to because maybe they don't have what they need in Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins. The big concern's there. I mean, they need a lot of help on both sides of the ball on the line, right? Their offensive line was horrible last year. And then, the bigger question, how horrible is this for people like Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson? Is Juju Smith-Schuster even remain a Steeler? Chase Claypool? I mean, Pat Freiermuth. There's a lot of questions about this quarterback situation. This is a key one to me that I'll be watching because, I mean, they may be a wild card here just like Indy. Right. I mean, our feeling is the Steelers are, play it close to the vest, are very conservative in their approach, like to build from within, don't like to make big, wild changes, take huge swings. And maybe this is a time they're going to have to make a change in that approach. You might have also heard Tom Brady retired from the NFL. Rob Gronkowski, speaking just yesterday, thinks he could be back in a year or two. Hell, he could be back this year. Who knows? Brady kind of left the door open. Never say never. But this seems to me like he's really, he's made his decision. Family comes into it for these guys, right? They don't get to spend a lot of time with their family, with their kids. Money is not an issue. He's starting a number of businesses, a clothing line. He's got his TB12 brand there for gyms and workout and fitness and things like that, diet. So I don't think we'll see Tom Brady again, but I'm with Tom Brady, never say never. And that includes even this year. I mean, if Tom Brady was playing in the NFL in 2022, would I be surprised? Yes. Would I be shocked? No. Because it's the NFL. It's crazy. You never know. So that leaves Tampa Bay needs a quarterback. Are they going to be okay going with a Kyle Trask or Blaine Gabbert? No, they're probably not. They're going to be a player in the free agent market. I think, we mentioned Jimmy G likely available. Maybe they make a move for him. Would Russell Wilson like to play for that team? Maybe he'll open up broaden his doors. Would Aaron Rodgers like to go to Tampa Bay and say, yes, I can do what Tom Brady did? I don't think that's very likely, but yes, all these things are possible. That's why we're setting the table here. We're throwing the situations out that we need to watch because that's the thing about the NFL. You'll hear me say this often. It's a 365-day-a-year reality show. The NFL loves it that way. We kind of love it that way. The ongoing drama, look, I'd like for everything to be decided the day the season ends, right? So I can start working on, my fantasy plans for the coming year. That's not how it works. There's going to be some degree of flux. And the teams we'll be watching again, in addition to Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Denver. I don't think Denver is satisfied with where they're at. I think with a new coach coming in, there's going to be a lot of talk, as we've heard here. Remy throughout Renzo throughout the question about Aaron Rodgers. I mean, look, that also would not be like a shocking outcome, right? Aaron Rodgers ending up with the Denver Broncos. There are connections there, right? So we've got to acknowledge and accept that. So that's where we're at heading into Super Sunday. I want to thank you all for showing up. Appreciate the questions and the time and your attention. I just want to remind you, we've got a lot going on here on the YouTube channel. We're making plans. We're working in the background on things you will be seeing soon that will make this channel more interactive, allow you to take a more active role in these shows, allow me to bring in guests a little more easily and do some things like that and make it a little more entertaining and exciting than just one old dude sitting here talking at you and reading and answering your questions. I mean, I have a great time. I love doing this. I love that you come here and listen to this and take part in it and give me your feedback and your questions. But we want to take that to